We have to watch this now. Okay, we might have to watch it in 2x speed. Should we try that? Maybe 1.5 speed. Oh, where's my face?
Opportunity to interview Greg Street, aka Ghostcrawler, who is the director of the future Riot MMO RPG. Before
So a normal person like could talk at this speed, right? You could have a conversation at this speed.
getting into this interview, though, there are a couple of things that I do want to mention. First, this is a podcast-style interview where Greg and I are pretty much just openly talking, and the focal point around our discussions is around his personal life, as well as his personal preferences, his influences, and his experiences when it comes to the MMO genre, both as a dev and as a player. My goal was to introduce Greg Street, the person, and give you guys some insight to the man that is going to be directing the most anticipated MMORPG. Now, some of you guys may know already, if you watched the teaser, that the original cut was about 2 hours and 10 minutes long. In this version that you're going to be seeing, I had to cut it down to like an hour and 20 to 30 minutes. Unfortunately, there were some things that I did have to remove, but some of the cuts were also for the purpose of viewing pleasure, just to make it a little bit.
So he says there's things he had to remove. In here, in his comment, he said, sorry for the delay, because the video was supposed to be released like last week, right? So I'm trying to talk on 1.5 speed. The video was supposed to be last week. Okay, so and he says here that he's on the other side of the planet, but he had to talk to Riot. He had to talk to Riot. Riot plus having worlds, communicating with my editor and Riot. So he must have had to communicate with them, and they must have had to like watch it and work out like what was okay to have in the video, right? Which is interesting to think that there were things discussed in this podcast that were deemed not okay to include and share with the public.
More straightforward for you guys, make it a little bit easier to follow. I do want to give a special thanks to Riot for working alongside me with this and allowing me the opportunity to provide this video for you guys. Before starting the video, be sure to check me out on Twitch. I'm streaming on that platform 5 to 6 days a week, and let's begin. Thank you guys for joining me today. I have a super special guest that I've been very...
He knows something that we don't. Yeah, right? He knows something. All right, I'm gonna stick myself. Yeah, okay, let's go.
Very excited to talk to. Today I'm joined here by Mr. Greg Street himself, aka Ghostcrawler. He's the director of the Riot MMO that's going to come out in like the year 4000 or something, whenever that's going to come out. And today we're just going to be talking about the man himself and his thoughts, and talking about some games and his life and things like that. So I'm super excited to do that. Greg, could you maybe give us a quick introduction? Let us know who you are.
Yeah, I'm Greg Street. I'm an American video game developer. I've been making games for a long time. I have to count 20-something years, I think. Started off with real-time strategy games, Age of Empires, then went to a little place called Blizzard and worked on World of Warcraft for several years. Managed to leverage that into a job at Riot. I was lead designer on League of Legends for a while. Then I went over.
He's been working on video games longer than I've been alive.
And took on a job kind of managing the League of Legends IP, because we wanted to do a lot of cool things with it, like make a TV show. And then started an MMO set in the same universe, which is where we are today.
So in this section, I want to talk about just your history. And it's interesting because you kind of have two sides, right? Like you've got the industry side, the work side, and then you've got the gamer side. Maybe we could start with the gamer side real quick. Can you just, I know you mentioned a few games that you played. Can you kind of give us a little bit of info on just your background as a gamer?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm super old school. I've been playing games my whole life. Like I played video games when they were like black and white, black and green screen, old like Pong, Atari 2600, the first NES, then SNES, and then every Nintendo.
Do you think he's good at video games, or do you think he's like me?
Xbox and PlayStation console along the way. A lot of PC games. Again, back when it was like black screen with the monitor yay big. Till today, it's always been a big part of my life. Back from when it was like pretty uncool to where now it's super mainstream. And was fortunate enough to leverage it into an actual job. And sometimes, I was interviewing someone the other day for.
No, I don't think being a boomer makes a difference. I think that your skill on video games is determined by how much you played as like a kid, okay, and then it just stays like nearly the same for the rest of your life, and then like just slowly drops down. So if he played a lot when he was a teenager, because I didn't, because my parents didn't let me, then maybe he's like still better than me.
For a job, and they asked like, oh, one of my concerns is if I get into video games, is it then not going to be fun to play games anymore? I'm like, oh no, don't worry about that. Like everyone I know still plays a ton of games.
Oh, that's awesome. Despite working for a video game company, I would have thought the same thing. If you work for a company, you're not going to really be able to really play that game. But I guess that's not really the case then?
No, not at all. Like when I was working on WoW, I would like work on the game all day and then go home at night and
Really?
Yeah.
Did your friends know who you were?
It depended. Like my really close friends knew who I was, but we kind of kept it secret from the whole guild because we didn't want it to be a big thing. And at the time, Blizzard was a little funny about that. If people knew who you were and started kind of stalking you online, you would go into the witness protection program, and they would make you move servers and change your character.
Really? Wow.
I don't know if they still do that, but that was their policy at the time, so I kept it super secret.
Right. Okay. Well, do you plan on playing the Riot MMO if and when it comes out?
If it comes out, I plan on playing it a lot. Like seriously, I have people at work already talking about, hey, are we gonna make a guild? And I'm like, whoa, slow down.
Okay, so is the MMO genre your bread and butter? Is it your...
Are we gonna make a guild? Does that mean there's gonna be guilds?
baby? Like, is that what you are? Is that how you identify as a gamer in that genre? Or just are you kind of like, you know, RTS and just
Guilds
this and that, and it's just
confirmed.
one of the many that you enjoy doing?
Are you taking
Yeah,
notes,
I
guys?
played a lot of different games. I did play a crap load of WoW even before I started working at Blizzard. And that was really my first MMO. I dabbled in EverQuest. I had played some older games. None of them really stuck. Warcraft's the first one that really got its hooks into me. I played a crap ton of it even before, like I said, working on it. But I don't play a lot of MMOs. They're huge, as I'm sure you know. They're a huge time investment, and it's hard to play lots of MMOs at a high level. And I'm a really competitive player, so I want to see the end game. I want to be at the end game, so it's hard to play a lot of them. Let's see, other than MMOs, I'm the kind of player that's motivated a lot by we would say mastery, getting better at something. So I like games with a relatively high skill component. I love a lot of the Dark Souls games I played over and over and over again because it's the kind of game that rewards experimentation in different builds. A lot of competitive games that are like just fun to play with friends. Not a lot of sports games, but other, played a lot of
yes, I
Team
like
Fortress
that.
2.
Sports games suck. FIFA can get in the bin. Fuck you if you play FIFA. Get some taste.
Back in the day, CS after that, a little less, and then I played a lot of Valorant even before it launched. I played just about everything. Not a ton of mobile games yet. I know there's some out there that are pretty cool and I've kept up with. I play a lot of Switch games. I travel a lot, and the Switch is great for that.
I gotta ask you, what are your 3 favorite MMOs as a gamer?
Wow.
House Hearts. Okay, Heroes of the Storm is a far superior game to FIFA. Okay, it doesn't matter if it's dead. Okay.
World of Warcraft's the easy one. After that, what would I say? And I know people are like analyze the crap out of the answers. I liked Star Wars Galaxies for the promise it made, which was you can do anything. You want to be a dancer, I think you could be a baker, whatever. You don't have to be a superhero. You could just be a.
Wait, what? 3 favorite MMOs.
Is great for that.
I gotta ask you, what are your 3 favorite MMOs as a gamer?
Wow. Let me think. World of Warcraft's the easy one. After that, what would I say? And I know people are like analyze the crap out of the answers. I liked Star Wars Galaxies for the promise it made, which was you can do anything. You want to be a dancer, I think you could be a baker, whatever. You don't have to be a superhero. You could just be a normal person. And that real open-endedness was pretty impressive. And going even farther back than that, Ultima Online, I played every Ultima game growing up.
Right.
And that game came out, that was the first like real MMO. And it just blew our minds that was played.
Do you think he's seen Sword Art Online?
These games he loved multiplayer. And then you could debate whether or not it's an MMO or not, but I'm very impressed with Destiny and what Bungie has done with just kind of making high production values, pretty quick content cadence, and kind of shown that hey, MMOs don't all have to look the same. Like it's maybe it's a looter shooter, maybe it's a something else, but I think that kind of shows you that MMOs don't have to just be. I gotta pick my words really carefully here. You don't have to be a WoW clone to be an MMO. How about that?
Right, and graphically it looks kind of insane. Well, it
Really
did when I
cool,
played it.
Yeah.
As far as the work goes, though, you've been working in the industry for quite a while. You worked with Blizzard before, and now you're working with Riot. Could you walk us through a little bit about your work history and how that's been for you? I am interested in the cultural difference, though. Yeah,
so I'll start with the first place I was Ensemble Studios, later became part of Microsoft, and we worked on the Age of Empires series. They also made Halo Wars. That was after I left. That company was started by a bunch of like non-gamers, almost as a spinoff from a real corporation. So it was fun in that we really had no idea what we were doing. It was very much a kind of a startup culture, except we were in an actual office in the corner of this corporation rather than a garage somewhere. My first desk was out in the hall because there was no more office space. So I just had a desk in the hall. And the desk I had was shared with like the office photocopier. And even crazier than that, when you're making games, you have bug software. Jira is one. There's a lot of different types of software. People keep the bugs there. Back then, networking wasn't as good as it is now. So the bug software was actually my computer. Like they just gave me the bug software computer and let me do my work on that. So every now and then I'd have to tab out and let someone like check their bug in and then tab back to my game, that's just what it was like back in the day. It was, I'd say unprofessional, but not unprofessional in the sense they treated us badly. Right. Just that it felt more like a bunch of dudes hanging out, like, let's make a video game.
Like a budget setup, pretty much.
Yeah. The company really wanted to be a great place to work, and they focused a lot on making sure we were happy. So we had like the Pop-Tarts in the pantry and lots of soda to keep us going. And we worked a lot, partially because it was fun and we wanted to be there and like go home to your apartment and you could be in this really cool office. And then we also crunched a lot because that was part of the video game industry then.
We also what a lot?
Still is. Not at Riot, but I really enjoyed it there. I felt like people cared about me. I felt like I could have an impact. The thing that started to change a little bit was Microsoft. They were just getting into gaming. This was right around the time Xbox first launched, and I felt like they were having more and more of an influence on the kinds of games we would make. And I don't have a lot of bad things to say about Microsoft, but it was this giant corporation kind of coming in on top of the happy little studio we had. And at the time, there's like no way Age of Empires is going to move the Microsoft stock price, right? Like, so we've not taken that seriously.
Age of Empires, can I just say, Age of Empires was like one of my favorite games. I as a kid, I spent so much time on it. I didn't have the English version of the game though. I had the Mexican version of the game, so it was all in Spanish. If you want your child, if you have a child and you want them to learn a different language and they love video games, tell them that they can only play their game in a different language, and they will learn very quickly.
Felt like we were kind of a line item veto. So when I fell in love with World of Warcraft and played it for a couple of years, I also just kind of cold called Blizzard and said, look, I love this game. Are there any opportunities to work on it? And my timing was really good, just from luck. And if there's one message, your viewers should take away, it's like there's a lot of luck in this industry, like any industry. Right. My timing at Blizzard was really good because Blizzard was starting to spin up a game that they called, it was called Titan, that later, through many iterations, eventually became Overwatch. But I think a lot of people know it started as an MMO. And Blizzard was going to be a 2 MMO studio with World of Warcraft and then a MMO set in modern times called Titan. So a lot of the World of Warcraft team was being pulled over to start that new project. And they really needed some backfill on World of Warcraft. And they really needed what we call systems designers, which is what I do most of the time, which is kind of the math side, the number parts of making video games. Okay. So making a class and deciding, well, this class needs a certain number of abilities, and this is what damage should look like, and this is how much you should heal, and this is how to balance a game. Like, that was something done a lot for the RTS genre. Oh so it felt like something I could.
Isn't it I could see Zalk doing? I could not do that. I don't have the brain.
Combined that with the fact that I played so many hundreds of hours of World of Warcraft and turned that into a job. And they were like, yes, we need some more senior designers. We need some more design managers who could run a team. Right. So they pretty much hired me to take over the class team on World of Warcraft.
Interesting. Wow. Can I just, if I may interject, I just want you to know that I prefer playing fist-based classes. And if you guys don't have that in the Riot MMO, I usually tend to go towards warrior classes. I know Asmongold as well plays warrior-based classes. Go ahead, just make us OP. Okay, just let you know, since you're the guy.
No, I don't like fist-based classes. That's silly. I like classes with big sticks. Big, massive sticks. Staffs, bows, a big fuck-off wand.
I played a warrior a lot. I was the main tank before I went to work at Blizzard. And then at Blizzard, I worked a lot on the warrior class. I said for a while I was the plate guy because I would do warrior, paladin, death knight. Even though I was like one of the lead designers, I still got my hands dirty with game design, which I honestly don't do anymore. This is my buddy Hudson.
He's adorable. I'm a huge dog guy. I know I told you that before our interview, but yeah, oh my gosh, I want to steal him if I could. I just want to.
Right now, he doesn't know there's video on. Yeah. Yes, I love plate users. I didn't work on the monk class directly, but I helped the designer who did and kind of helped set up like this is the vision we want for the monk. And
interesting.
Yeah, and again, when people ask what kind of classes will we have in the League MMO, the cheap answer I always give, take it or leave it, is look at the kind of champions we have, and you can think about what kind of classes you might turn those into.
Can we get one class reveal drop, please?
No.
Okay, I tried. Sorry, guys, I tried.
Okay. You know what? Even if I did, there's a good chance it would change anyway. So that's kind of the danger of talking about things too early.
I would say that I would bet money that you'll have at least one form of warrior class in it, though, right? Like, I mean, you're talking about like Microsoft coming in and the whole corporate side. That's
hang on. Was there a cut there? Wait.
Drop, please.
No.
Hang on. I'm sorry. We have to watch this at normal speed.
Okay. I tried. Sorry, guys. I tried. Okay.
You know what? Even if I did, there's a good chance it would change anyway. So that's kind of the danger of talking about things too early.
I would say that I would bet money that you'll have at least one form of warrior class in it, though, right? Like, I mean,
there was a cut. There was a cut. I bet when Riot watched this, they were like, no, we don't want to give that information away just yet. Oh man, I'd pay good money to know what he said then. Will there not be a warrior class? And why does Riot not want to reveal that information just yet? I don't know. I guess it just shows that they're like really not far along at all.
Okay. You know what? Even if I did, there's a good chance it would change anyway. So that's kind of the danger of talking about things too early.
I would say that I would bet money that you'll have at least one form of warrior class in it, though, right? Like, I mean, you're talking about like Microsoft coming in and the whole corporate side. That's kind of happened to Blizzard recently, right? I think with Activision coming in. I hear a lot of talk about, it's just not the same. The culture's not the same. Your thoughts on that, maybe?
I mean, I haven't been there like 9 years now, but I still have a lot of friends at Blizzard, and it was similar to the Microsoft acquisition in that while Blizzard was crushing it, Activision stayed far away. And once that second MMO I was talking about started to struggle, meaning it was getting really expensive and taking a while, that's when Activision stepped in a little more. And they're like, hey, Blizzard, we love your games, but they are way expensive and you are very slow. And I mean, yeah, both those things are true. And I just think the way Activision tried to get Blizzard to fix those two issues probably felt a little heavy-handed, a little kind of not Blizzard-y to the maybe to players too, but I think to the team.
How have things been going with Riot? You guys got like Valorant, you guys got League of Legends, like everything you guys touch turns into gold. Now, is that a testament to like just the working environment and the culture of Riot, or
why didn't you say TFT? TFT is the best.
Or is it just you guys just got lucky with like a few games? Like, what's the deal? It can't be luck, right? I mean,
there is an element of luck to it.
Sure.
streaming and Twitch, I think, really helped League. It just came right at the right time when streaming became a big thing, and that I think really helped to elevate League of Legends. Right. Esports was still kind of in its baby state when League came on, and now League is arguably the biggest esport in the world. I joined Riot after a trip to Asia where everyone in China and Korea were talking about League of Legends, and I was like, I played League of Legends, but I didn't realize it had become such a global phenomenon.
Right.
And
it still is, by the way.
It still is, yeah. And when I got back to the States, I'm like, I gotta look at League of Legends. I need to take it more seriously. I thought, oh, it's like that Dota clone. Like, I didn't realize it was doing so well.
Wow.
That Dota clone.
It was heavily based on that formula, which was new at the time. And I think part of what Riot is really good at is looking at a game and saying, okay, there's something there that players really love, but there are also some rough edges. I bet if we fix those rough edges, the game would become even more popular. And so, I mean, I could take no credit for it because I wasn't on League of Legends at the time, but decisions like, well, we're not going to have turning radius, and we're not going to have denial and things like that. Dota fans were like, well, that's stupid. That you're going to ruin the game. But it actually ended up that it made the game more fun, more approachable, more sticky, and we got a really huge audience. And the Valorant team kind of tried.
Said it. Why? I think it's funny that as well. Like Riot, like they watched this and they were like, yeah, he's allowed to say that Dota clone.
We do the same thing with tactical shooters. We're already really popular. We don't claim at all that we have that genre, but we looked at it and said like, hey, some of the ways like the players cheat with peeker's advantage and bots and stuff like that. Like if we can fix that and we can kind of restore the competitive integrity, and instead of having the kind of very overt military theme of Counter-Strike, let's make up our own IP. Let's do something a little crazy and have these agents with different abilities. And I love Valorant. I think it's an amazing game. I'm so proud to be part of the company that produced that. And you ask what is the special sauce that makes that happen? It's really that above everything else, Riot places value on players. We don't want to disappoint players. We want players to say, yes, those people get me. They understand me. They know what kind of games I want. They know what I think is cool. They know what's hip right now. They can talk to me like a real person. And so we've always tried to really get inside the head of players, as well as we like to play games ourselves. Right. And that is it's exactly the reputation we wanted to get. Is we wanted every time we announced a new game for players to say, oh, I'm so excited because I trust that Riot's going to do a good job here. Mm-hmm. It was pretty unusual that we announced the MMO so early, and it was my boss, the CEO of the company, who said it was his idea. I didn't go rogue. He wanted to do that, and he wanted to do it for a few reasons. The first one is just to make players excited and to kind of tell them okay, you don't like competitive PvP games. Awesome, we'll get to you. And the second thing was we know we needed to recruit a lot of people, and recruiting when you're like, hey, will you come work for this game that I can't tell you anything about? Is hard. It's hard to recruit people that way.
Very true.
And then he figured probably rightly it would leak anyway. Either someone at the company or players would find out about it. And rather than trying to hide it, let's just be upfront and say, hey, we're making an MMO. It's early. We don't have a cinematic yet. We're not going to even tell you what the name is yet. But if you don't mind being a really long ride, we would love to have you all as the community take this journey with us.
That sounds so promising, and everything that you've just said is precisely the very reason why this game has so much hype, being 83 years away from releasing. It's 100%.
Wait, it was 45 a little while ago.
Oh, was it? Sorry, I'm throwing out different dates and waiting for you to be like, how did you know? You were talking a little bit about the world that we live in today being a little bit different with content creators.
Was there a cut there? Okay, whatever. Wait. Incorporating content creators
and it is. I mean, it's pretty crazy how big live streaming has become. How important is it to have content creators on board, not only for just the launch and promotion of the game, which is that's a given, right? You want to have a big launch, but to keep them in the game. Is that a high priority? In what way do you want to keep them involved? What's the deal there? Sorry if I worded that poorly. I'm jet lagged like crazy. I came back from the States yesterday, and I'm just
stop being paranoid about cuts. No, I think the cuts are important. The cuts are. Because what we're getting here is information, but there's also information that's deliberately been left out. And I think that's really interesting. And I think it's relevant when there's a cut immediately after a question or shortly after a question. And it's fun to sit here and speculate about what could have been said and that it was chosen to be left out and why it was.
So I hope that made sense. Sorry.
It does. It's really important. And for a really simple reason, which is players trust streamers and influencers, because I remember this industry when we would go to E3 and there would be some Hollywood celebrity up on stage talking about a game, and you'd be like, you never played this game, you're just reading a speech that somebody told you. Right. But for the most part, we know that the streamers they're gamers and they're talking about a game because they love the game. And yeah, maybe sometimes someone helps them out or they get exclusive access or get even paid or something. But I don't think a lot of streamers would stick with a game they hated for that reason. Right. And even when they play a game a lot, they're honest about what's working and what isn't working. And so in a really real sense, they're thought leaders. And if your streaming community turns on you, your players are going to turn on you too, because the players will feel a sense of betrayal or, oh, we thought they got us, but they really don't get us anymore. And the opposite is true. If you have people who are like, hey, if you listen to me, you should play this game. It's a great game. Even if you don't play the game, I'm going to talk about it a lot. And so it generates a lot of interest.
Right. Well, I'm down. to play,
Yeah.
give me a shout. So last question I want to ask you before we go into the next section, which is going to be the MMO talk. On that point, we were talking about streamers and viewership and stuff. How important is viewership on Twitch and viewership on YouTube? How important is that for you?
It is important. It's not the most important thing, right? It's not how you live or die, but it is important. It builds a lot of hype. If it's a new game, players pay attention to that. They're like, wow, why is everyone playing this game? Maybe I should check it out. By contrast, if a game starts to fall off, they're like, what is this, dead game meme or something like that? Like, I remember when Overwatch 1 launched, and for a little while, it passed League of Legends in viewership, and everyone's like, what does this mean? Is Overwatch the new thing?
Yeah.
And then for a while, they were trading off, and now League is comfortably ahead again. But, it does matter for that reason, is that it matters because players care about it and streamers care about it, and they watch those numbers. So
Okay, so I do want to move on here and get to our next section, and this is a section that I very much want to talk to you about. I want to just give a quick disclaimer here. Everything that we're about to talk about in this section, for those of you watching at home, these are Greg's personal thoughts and opinions on just the MMO genre, okay? This is not reflective of what's going to happen with the Riot MMO, and just two guys talking MMOs, right? I want to open this...
Okay, dude, but like, come on, like we Riot MMO director, full interview. Like, we all know why we're here.
up with my game. I would love to hear your thoughts on a game like Lost Ark. Number one, have you actually played Lost Ark, and to what extent?
Oh, he's talking about Lost Ark. Oh my god. Oh, a whole section about Lost Ark. Let's go.
Played it. I have not done a ton of endgame, for starters, just because it takes a really long time to get there.
Yeah.
My team at Riot has played it a lot because
Really?
it's a team of MMO players, and honestly, Lost Ark stuck with them a lot longer than some of the other games they played. So I also just asked the team, like, hey, what would you say you really love about the game? So this is both my experience and what they said. For starters, like, I'm a combat guy. Like, it's hard for me to play a video game if a combat system is weak. I'll do it once in a while, but that's what I really enjoy. Lost Ark has great combat. Like, it has viscerality, which is kind of a fancy word, but we usually use it to mean, like, if you're a character with a giant axe and that axe hits an enemy, you feel it. Like, it's heavy.
Impact.
Yeah, there's a sound effect, and the enemy jumps back and responds. Like, that feels, as a player, that feels awesome. And
I mean, if you didn't get to endgame, then you didn't get to see the best part about the game, which is the Legion raids, right?
the opposite of that we might call floaty. That's where, the weapon.
If I could take anything from Lost Ark to put into the Riot MMO, it would be the quality of the Legion raids and the mechanics in them.
And swung, and I thought I hit, but there was no response, or maybe
Get rid of the dailies.
Just like a
hit animation didn't line up. Yeah, like, I thought it hit, but it didn't, and now I feel kind of disappointed, or so I think they did just an outstanding job with that. The class design is stellar. At Blizzard, we talked a lot about what is the class fantasy. You said, you love to play warrior, you love to play this character. So when you're making any game with characters, whether it's an RPG or an MMO or not, you think about, well, what are people who play this going to like? And just to riff on warrior for a minute, if you're playing warrior, there's probably like a lot of weapons, or even if there's not a lot of weapons, like, weapons are really important. If you have something that feels like a warrior and it's casting a lot of spells, people are gonna be like, well, this isn't what I thought.
Right.
You want someone who's like, the armor matters, the experience, the skill matters. They want to feel like a soldier, a gladiator. It's all about that in your face melee, often big weapons, or at least you're very skilled with the weapons.
Melee? Melee.
Weapons. And so and Lost Ark is great with that. They're class fantasy. The classes were interesting. You feel like you got what you were expecting, but they put in enough of a twist that it wasn't like the boring same old.
Right.
I also the reason I got so into WoW, the reason I've stayed with MMOs and making a career out of it now is I really love the dungeon experience. I love a group of people getting together and having a challenge. And that's honestly got me into trouble sometimes as a developer, because as a game developer, if you make dungeons too hard, you might churn out a lot of players. And I've made that mistake before. But as a player, I love the challenge of, oh crap, how are we going to get past this? Like, given our skills, given our gear, given our class mix, what is the right solution to this problem? I love that kind of like, okay, let's get in the huddle and talk about what we're going to do to get through this next part, because it's really hard. And then the reward, when like a tough boss drops and everyone's cheering and like someone gets a new weapon, like that is what I live for. Like, as a player, as a designer, I love that.
Absolutely.
And Lost Ark had great challenging dungeons that really made you feel like, hey, you're gonna have to work at this. This is not a loot pinata. You're gonna have to think. You're gonna have to be at the top of your game. You're gonna have to fail a lot. And for me, I know it's not everyone's thing, but for me, that is what games are about.
That's interesting to say that.
Like, you don't get that experience in Lost Ark of like spamming a boss and then hoping that a special weapon will drop. It was interesting that he was talking about how he likes that aspect,
because that is something that I did want to bring up, and we can kind of mix this into the same topic. One of the things that Lost Ark is known for, I would 100% agree with you, by the way, the classes and the combat, amazing. And the third kind of thing that everyone that has played the game would tell you that makes Lost Ark stand out is the raiding experience. I don't know if you saw the latest raid come out in KR. It's crazy, and the fact that the game is top down, it gives it a new experience that you can't experience in like a third-person perspective, right? In NA, we just got the third Legion raid, which is very difficult. Have you experienced those Legion raids, and like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah,
I've not played them again.
Okay.
So
You need to try.
A level of dedication. I have watched a lot of streams because again, I love raiding. Like
Right.
it's for me, and again, not for everyone. And I understand
everyone,
that
right.
that is the pinnacle of the game, and that's what I want to, the part I want to get to, the part that I'm always excited
Absolutely.
about. And I agree with you on the camera angle. Like part of the challenge you always had on World of Warcraft is when you make a really big boss and then you're a warrior up there fighting it, you see its toe.
Yeah.
And
That's true.
you don't get to see kind of the majesty of the whole creature on screen at once without pulling the camera out. I think it can also help it feel a little more like a battle scene when you can see like lots of people around and get a sense for where you are in the room rather than it just being, oh, I'm just going to beat on this giant bag of hit points in front of me.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. On the topic of raids, I know you prefer more difficult, challenging, getting that feeling of, hey, we did this, hell yeah, You talk about hardcore versus casual. Now, I played WildStar. I played a lot of WildStar.
Oh, WildStar was awesome.
I did, right? I absolutely loved WildStar.
I have never played WildStar.
About it. But that game died in a hurry. And to this day, I think it's still a huge mystery. I mean, most people say, hey, it was because there was a content drought at endgame and or the raids were just simply too difficult and they really, really catered towards the hardcores. I honestly still think that the WildStar rating is, in my opinion, just the most difficult thing that I'd experienced in a PvE world. Personally.
Yeah. It was like a bullet hell shooter, right? The way you have to like avoid all of this stuff on the ground.
Absolutely. And it was a great experience, but maybe that was the reason why it died. But then you got a game like Lost Ark where it's so successful because of how challenging the raids are. So like, what are your thoughts on that? It
is hard to look at a game and predict like, yeah, this game is going to crush or this game's going to die on the vine. Like if it was that easy to do it, like every game would be a huge hit,
Right.
It's sometimes hard. I was really pulling for WildStar because
I was too.
It was what I wanted in a game, and they went all in. Like they're like, we're making an MMO, and I don't know, was it the setting was a little unusual? Was the timing not right? Had players moved on to different genres? It's hard to say.
What if you killed it? If you just guess as a player,
at the end of the day, it didn't have a large enough player base, right? And so then you have to go into well, why did it not? Did a lot of people try it and then kind of churn out? Did it never get that kind of critical mass of players? Because there have been, it's rare, but there have been games that were kind of sleeper hits for a while and then gradually picked up and suddenly were huge. Like Final Fantasy, their MMO, they had to do the big reboot and now the game is more popular than ever. There's games like No Man's Sky, again, barely an MMO if at all, but people almost rejected it. And now look at Cyberpunk also is, people are like, oh, this game's bad. And now everyone's like, oh, wait, this game got really good.
Right.
So you can do it. You can launch.
I'm thinking of actually playing it this time. I remember when it came out, I bought the game and I spent 7 hours in character creation and then half an hour in the actual main story and I dropped the game. So
all are even disappointing and recover. But the opposite happens a lot true. And we've seen that over and over with MMOs where players join, they go for the level up, they get to the end game, maybe they even participate in PvP or raids, and then they're like, okay, I've done it. I'm done. I'm going to move on. And then maybe they come back, but maybe they don't, and now you've lost.
Right. Yeah. So the latest raid in Lost Ark, it's a 4-man raid, but the other Legion raids are 8-man raids. Now, there are other, like WildStar, it was like 500-man raids. I mean, obviously, I'm exaggerating, right?
I think it was 30 or 40.
It was like 30 or 40 that all had to like really be on it, right? So when you have a game that, some people want that big gaming experience where there's just a bunch of people raiding, and then some prefer to be like, hey, I'd rather just play with my 4 buddies, my 3 buddies, and just recomplete everything itself. What are your thoughts on that?
So as a player and as a game designer, I like big raids. I just think I love the epic feeling. Like there's no other experience like that in video games. Like even in Battle Royale, you may start with 100 people, but it's, it gets whittled down really quickly.
Right.
I recognize there are problems, and I'll talk about those in a minute, but you could do so many cool things. Like you can just kill off party members. That's really hard to do when you have 5. Like as soon as you kill off one party member, you've lost 20% of your power, and that's hard. And you probably lost your only tank or something like that. Whereas if you have 4 tanks and you kill a couple, well, the group can keep going. And so you just have more versatility as a designer making an interesting fight. Now, I recognize some players like smaller groups. Some players want to play with their friends, and their friend group is 5 or 8, and it's not 40. When you get those really, really big raid sizes, there's almost always some dead weight, and it's hard to be super brutal about like, well, your SO is playing with us and they're not really holding up their end of the bargain, so they're out. That's so. I feel like the right answer is just to have a variety. Have smaller group, have larger groups. Destiny does that. WoW does that. Lost Ark is doing that. So that's probably the smart thing to do as a developer. But as a player, I usually pick,
everyone.
Right. I do want to talk to you about monetization, but before I ask that question, what do you think separates games like WoW and Final Fantasy 14 from the others that just don't make it? Like, what is it about them? I mean, is it just the budget? Is it the creative design that's behind it? Is it the team that's running it? I mean, it could be multiple things. I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think you're right. The budget is part of it. Like, again, thinking of raiding, it's a spectacle. And in Final Fantasy, when a boss comes down and like maybe the guitar kicks in or something, like they don't mind making like custom music for boss fights and stuff like that. Like it is something amazing to see. And you can make a really, really fun encounter that's pretty much just like a big ogre dude hitting you, but it's just not the same epic scale. It's not the sense of like, this is something. But yeah, budget's part of it. I also think the bigger games and maybe the ones with the bigger budget are just better at serving a broader audience. So say you make an MMO and you're like, hey, this MMO is PvP only because we think we can just make a better game if it's PvP. Well, you could probably guess there are going to be players that are like, I'm out. That's not me. Final Fantasy has a great like crafting game. It has a great social game. It lets you decorate your houses. So it serves players a lot of really different motivations.
Right. I don't know if you can answer this, but do you feel comfortable with the budget that you have for the Riot MMO?
Oh, that's actually a really interesting question. I think I can answer it. One of the nice things about Riot is we're not going to run out of money, right? I'm not going to have a publisher that's like, hey, if you got to ship by Christmas or we're canceled. Riot will cancel this game if the game isn't good enough. They're not going to cancel the game because it gets too expensive. And those go hand in hand. We can make a very expensive bad game, and then I would get fired. We can make a less expensive game that still really captures hearts and minds, but it's not a blank check, right? Like I have to prove, and the team has to prove that whatever Riot is putting into it is worth it. Because they can spend the money on somewhere else. They can make a different game. They can double down on Valorant or something. So it's definitely not a blank check, but it's also not like we're not.
We have this already, but I don't want
startup where gosh, we're out of money. What are we going to do? I can always go back and ask for more. Whether or not I get more is going to depend a lot on what they think. How does the game look? What do playtesters say? How are we doing? About hitting our milestones. So that is how. In the very simplest sense, you can think of it as you get some money. If you spend it well, they're going to give you more. If you don't spend it well, you probably don't. And in our case, rather than shipping the bad game, it would just get shit canned.
That's awesome. That distinction, I think, is massive. Not only from your perspective, but especially from the consumer's perspective.
I think we have seen this. I'm going to skip.
So one of the things that the game does need to do is it needs to generate revenue. Okay, so I'd love to get your thoughts on a sub-based model versus a free-to-play model.
The truth is they're both viable. What you generally get in a sub-based model is players, because fewer players can afford it, but are a very steady revenue stream. So you might say, I'd rather 1 million players who pay me $15 a month regularly than to play. It's because you think you can have a lot of players, and you'll be okay even if they don't individually spend a lot of money. You'll have a lot of players who spend nothing. You'll have some players who spend more, but on average, you're assuming they're not going to pay that much. Assume that they're going to move on. The notion of pay for power is not just had to play it at PC bongs or PC cafes, because then they're literally paying for the hour. Right. So rather than paying per hour to get 100 hours to get a sword,
think about the YouTube video.
So
think about my dick.
That's a big one.
I probably said that, or a lot of players that say it's just not what the business is like.
Right.
We're not going to do pay to win. We're not going to do pay to power. I'm pretty confident saying that. The business is like.
That's a big one.
I probably said that, or a lot of players that say it's just not Riot's style. Right. We really want players to feel like they're welcome back in the game at any time. And yeah, if life is rough right now and you're between jobs, or you just can't, you can't pay for the subscription, I'd rather them not churn out. I'd rather them be able to keep playing. So.
RPG.
It's probably the most expensive kind of game to play.
Right? I would think so.
It's like huge open world, Horizon. It needs a chat system. It needs, a gear system. It just, every system you can imagine. So yeah, they're very expensive to build. And if it's a super content heavy game, they're also very expensive to run.
Absolutely.
If it's a more PvP based game or a more sandbox game, it's less expensive to run because players.
Obviously, if everyone is buying these costumes and stuff, sure, I know for a fact it would be, but like real.
Yeah, we've seen this. I'm going to skip it.
Now, I have always personally preferred sandbox games until I start playing Lost Ark, and maybe it comes with age too, but I'm starting to enjoy these theme park games. But sandbox games have always been very fun for me because of the entertainment that comes with player-driven content. That and the fact that I'm a big PvP guy. Lost Ark is a PvE game. Lost Ark really has turned me on to the PvE side. However, the player-driven content versus design content, what are your thoughts and opinions and preferences for that?
I mean, as a player, I play both kinds. It's a different experience. I think the theme park sometimes gets derided as being, old-fashioned or boring. But some of those best experiences, like I was talking about, when a boss in Final Fantasy drops and the music changes, that's a theme park, and it's epic, and I love it. I'm there for it. I think that's great. The novelty part, and novelty is kind of a funny word, but we think about it as when I talk to my friends the next day, what am I going to say? And maybe I'll say hey, did you see that episode of Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon or whatever last night? Did you see when that boss dropped? That was so epic. That's very fleeting because the moment's kind of there and gone. Right. In a PvP game, those stories can kind of go on forever because it's, hey, you'll never guess what happened. I was in this game last night and I thought we were going to lose, and then this guy showed up and this crazy thing happened. And the stories are really about the other players. And you frame it in terms of the game, but the stories are not, the developers wanted me to experience this XYZ, so that's what I experienced. Right. So that's why I have a slight preference towards more novelty as a player, and the way you get that is often other players. And PvP is the most glaring example of that because you need a lot less content in a PvP game. Like League of Legends doesn't have a story, it doesn't have a campaign, it doesn't need it. The story is you and your team went up against this other team.
Quick question on that note. Classic WoW is very different from retail WoW, right? Obviously. If you had to choose, do you prefer the classic WoW experience or the retail WoW experience? Not like the nostalgia. Classic WoW is a lot more sandboxy compared to retail WoW, comparatively speaking, right? Like which of the two do you personally prefer?
No, I agree with that. My criticism of, I don't want to bash on Blizzard. I love Blizzard. I have a lot of friends there. My criticism of the Shadowlands expansion I came back for was a lot of it felt like I was playing a single player game in a chat window. Like I was still chatting with my friends, but we weren't doing stuff together. the campaign is mostly a single player experience, and having your friends play it with you is often kind of challenging because you're in different parts of the story or whatever. The dungeons and raiding were wonderful in Shadowlands, and I really enjoyed that. And again, that's like why I played the game, but it has much more of that. It's not quite a sandbox, but it is a little bit in how you approach the different bosses. It's like, oh, we need someone to sheep this boss. We don't have a mage. What are we going to do? How are we going to solve this?
Right.
That kind of thing. That's really, again, that problem solving is really fun for me. So you get some of that novelty back in challenging content.
Gotcha. So factions are another big thing with MMOs. You have games like WoW where it's literally faction versus faction. Ion did it as well with a third.
I don't know if he's going to talk about it, but Albion Online, the PvP and the like, is it factions? I can't remember. The like constant like war going on. That's so much fun. That was like some of the best PvP I've seen. Constantly moving borders all the time. Yeah, I really enjoyed that.
Faction. What are your thoughts and preferences when it comes to faction versus no faction?
I mean, again, there are strengths and weaknesses of both approach, and I don't think you could just say there's a right and a wrong. Like, what you get out of factions is a great story because you know who the bad guy is, you know who the enemy is. Like, I hate those guys. Let's go kill them. That is baked right in, and it's awesome. And that, just like with any sport, you root for your team. You get that sense of tribality, I guess. So that is what factions get you. What they miss is, say you and I want to play a new MMO together, and you're like, oh, I picked these guys. I'm like, well, shit, I picked the other guys. I guess we'll never play together because now we're in a faction. That's the big downside, and it's hard to get around it without watering down the story that brought you there in the first place.
Right. Do you have a personal preference if you had to choose? Like, if you're going to play a game?
I play games. Maybe a lot of people play games this way. I try to kind of play games with my friend group, so a faction doesn't really hurt us that much because we'll talk ahead of time about, hey, what are we going to do? Even like my WoW guild, they're like, hey, we could be Horde or Alliance this expansion, and that discussion happened. So factions don't have that.
Yeah, but maybe just make it so that you can change, right? Problem solved.
Flaw for me that they might for some.
Moving on. Progression. Now this is a big one for me.
There's no point in the faction. Well, no, but maybe so like you get one free change, okay, with your account, and then after that you can only change once every 6 months.
In my opinion, one of the biggest downsides to Lost Ark is the daily grind, and they call it homework. Like, literally, that's the term we use. We call it homework. Those start adding up, and it's a very alt-focused game, which is another thing that I want to talk to you about after this. But it's a grind. Nobody likes it. Right? Nobody likes doing it in the West, at least. But at the same time, how do you make a game, an MMO, not repetitive? You do need to give tasks for players to do every day to log into the game and feel that progression, so that when they do get progress, they feel rewarded. Right? There needs to be that grind to a certain degree. Yeah. I would love to hear your thoughts on MMORPG progression. And let's start with that. Dailies and the day-to-day content. Your thoughts?
Go.
So MMOs, RPGs, I think in general need progression. I know there are people out there that say, oh, you could have a very flat game and it'll work. I think, I like to get more powerful. I like to get new weapons and spells or whatever. So I think progression is important. It is a very delicate tuning point because if players progress too quickly, they kind of run out of stuff to do. They're like, okay, I'm done. And if they progress too slowly, it's frustrating. It's like, yeah, you play for 1,000 hours and you get, 5 more hit points. Like that feels pretty crap.
It's terrible.
So the tuning is really important, and you want to make sure that you can progress at a rate that you feel without running out of stuff to do too quickly. So dailies, wow, I remember. So in World of Warcraft, we added more dailies because players said, hey, I have nothing to do. I like raiding. I raid with my guild once or twice a week. What am I supposed to do the rest of the time? Originally, it was, go farm flasks and other types of consumables. And over time, that changed to, well, here are some quests you can do or grinding or whatever because you want to get X amount of currency every day to kind of, players said they wanted to play the game more. And so that's the kind of inexpensive way from a developer standpoint. I'm sure players would love to have a new raid, but raids are expensive.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Hard thing to do. So while you're waiting for the new raid, here, have some dailies, have some, currency, have some grinding. I think the better games offer you choices, which are, again, it's hard to tune because if you say, look, you could PvP for an hour or you could do quests for 10 minutes, well, everyone will pick the quest. But if you could tune it right to where people can do what they enjoy doing or even change it up, like, oh, I'm so burned out of killing wolves, I'm going to go PvP instead. Like, that's the sweet spot. And I think that's what, as a player, and as a developer, that's what I enjoy when the tuning is good so that you can kind of do lots of different things and be okay.
Right. And you're right. It just sucks because, like, if it gets to the point where it's like, I have to do 20 dailies a day or I'm behind, that really sucks.
I'm gonna let my friends down because they're depending on me. I'm the healer, I'm the tank, whatever. And now that guilt sucks. It's funny because we were talking about earlier about smoothing off the rough edges of games. The way most people played EverQuest was you would go out and you'd do some quests, and then you'd run out of quests, and then you'd go grind on some wolves or whatever.
I have a quest. I haven't played EverQuest, but if you like, I've only heard about it because of the MMO RPG subreddit, which is obsessed with EverQuest.
Was, hey, you're never gonna reach that point where you have to go grind. Like when you finish the quest, there's gonna be another quest and then another quest. And WoW let you go not only from 0 to 60 just doing quests, but having options like, oh, I don't want to go to this zone. Next time I'm gonna go to a different zone.
Right.
And that was kind of their big innovation. So adding lots of quests filled in the grind, but then in the end game, the daily quests almost become a different kind of grind that you log in every day. I don't love logging into games every day. Sometimes I don't want to play a game. I want to watch TV. Sometimes I want to go out with my friends. It feels mean when you're like requiring people to log in every single day without fail or they fall behind. Logging in every few days or maybe once a week, that I can commit to. For a game I love, I don't mind playing once a week.
One of the things that I feel like Lost Ark does do well, this doesn't excuse all the dailies in my opinion, but they do have rest bonus that you can stack throughout the week, and like you get like double the loot. I feel like that's a pretty good system to really kind of take a break, right? What are your thoughts on alts? Because I'm personally not a big fan of alts, yet I'm playing a game that revolves around having a lot of alts. But I hated alts. I'm very much a one character person. One of the things I really like about Final Fantasy is that I can play other classes but still play my character, if that makes sense, rather than you know what I mean? Like, what are your thoughts on alts in MMOs?
My opinions have changed a little bit over time there. When I started playing MMOs, I thought like everyone should have a main, and alts like it's almost like a failure in the game if someone has an alt, because like my friend Andy, he's a hunter, and I just want to know that Andy's a hunter. It's a role playing game, right? Where he's going to play a role. I'm a warrior, he's a hunter. And then when he starts playing his mage instead, I'm like, well, that's weird. You're a hunter. I don't like to think of you as both people. I want to know that when you're on, you're a hunter. And then my thinking shifted a little bit, because you know, I mentioned before the thought of novelty. There's hardly anything in a game that gives you more novelty than playing a different class. It's like, oh, I have to think about things differently. I have a different rotation. I care about different stats, different drops. I do different things in fighting. So there is a lot of value in that. So I think the sweet spot again comes down to, is playing an alt like restarting the game from scratch, or at the opposite extreme is playing an alt just kind of a cosmetic change, because like if you don't actually need to run additional dungeons to get gears for your alt, like why have an alt, right? You're just that's basically just, oh, I want to look like an elf instead of a dwarf or something. Right.
Do you like how Final Fantasy has done it?
I think it's a clever solution in that,
I don't know. I like having like an identity, you know? Like a lot of us here, like who play MMOs, like we already know what we like. I'm not a huge fan of alts. You like trying different classes and stuff. White hair and a staff. That's what I like. I like white hair and a staff. That's exactly what I want. I like trying new stuff. I don't like it when the meta is like having 10 plus characters to grind.
And I assume your viewers all know that Final Fantasy lets you just have one character. It could be lots of different classes, but only one at a time, and you just kind of switch. Right. It's really cool, because if you like your character, you don't have to switch. Like, I can do anything with this character. The bummer is if a new like race or something comes out, you don't get a different experience. You can't say, oh, what is I can't remember the name of the Drakthir, the new dragon people in the new WoW expansion. Like, they come out, you're like, well, I don't need them because my one character can already do it all.
Right.
And because what I really like about MMOs is the social aspect and playing with friends, it kind of turns me off when someone is, well, I can solve any problem with alts. And to give an example, when I started playing World of Warcraft, like, you need to find an enchanter. Like, you want something enchanted, go find an enchanter. You want someone to pick a lock, go find a rogue who can lockpick. Right. What it turned into is everyone had an enchanter. It's like, well, I have an alt as an enchanter. I'll just enchant my own stuff. I don't need other players. I'm like a one-man army. And so that kind of bumped me out a little bit, because I really love the player interactions. And I think, you know, with the player economy and BDO did a really good job of that. Of like, you need other players. You can't just solve it all yourself.
I feel like that's something that vanilla art.
Oh my god, the economy in BDO, like at the beginning. Oh my god, my friend, when she first started, like she made it her job to breed and sell horses, and like that was her job, and that was what she did in the game. And I just oh my god, I just love that. I love that so much, because like if she was in the world of BDO, like in real life, that is what she would do. That is what she would do. And I absolutely love that. The side of BDO that wasn't combat, and like the node system, and like I'd set up this little empire selling timber. It was just Anyway, I thought that was so cool.
Age and Albion did very well. You have certain people that can craft certain things, and within that, it needs certain things, and that requires different professions and stuff like that. And it just became, I'm looking for a carpenter, or I'm looking for someone that can make weapons, or something like that. And that definitely enhanced my experience as a player in the game, for sure. I get what you're saying, definitely.
And I think there are ways to have alts that don't let you kind of be the one-man army, and maybe their games will figure out ways to do that.
Right. Okay. So moving on, as far as the progression goes, your thoughts on horizontal versus vertical progress in MMOs.
I think you need both. Like, I don't tend to stick with games that are just horizontal, because I like to get more powerful. That's kind of I came into digital role-playing games from Dungeons & Dragons and physical role-playing games. So that's just what I think about a game is, you get more powerful, you get better spells, you get a better weapon. I do like having some amount of horizontal progression, because it just, the crappy way to say it is it gives you another bar to fill up. And like, if you're stuck on one thing, you can go work on something else. Right. Really smart games like Civilization have that, I want to play one more turn feel, because you're almost about to finish something. And even if like one goal is really, really far away, you turn around, another goal is really close. And then by the time you finish that goal, the other goal isn't that far away as it used to be. Right. And so, you can see where that's going. So I think clever horizontal progression does that. Right. It also kind of lets players do what they want. Like someone who says, well, I like raiding okay, but it's not my main thing. What I really like to do is, be a blacksmith and make armor and weapons for other players. Like, it gives them a way to kind of focus on that without it just being make the number go up, make the DPS go up.
Yes. What about obtaining and enhancing gear? You've got games like Lost Ark and BDO where
also, can I just say that, like, I would love for there to be some, like, I love collectibles, okay? Not like really hard ones, but like the Makoko seeds in Lost Ark. they were like crack. The fucking noise that it makes when you pick it up, it was so delicious, and it was one of my favorite parts about it, collecting these. And yeah, I wish that they would include something, so just a little something like that.
You don't get drops with weapons in your gear for the most part. You just enhance it, and it's like the higher you go, the less the percentage it is, and then it's just like, hey, I've got a 0.01% chance for this to go, versus doing this epic raid boss and then getting the drop and being the lucky one to get the drop. And it's like, well, if you think about your odds of getting mythic item, whatever the highest grade is in a big raid, it's kind of works out to be the same thing. It's just packaged differently. What are your thoughts and preferences?
I mean, again, I hate to keep going as an answer, but there's the reason these problems aren't solved is because there's pros and cons, right?
Absolutely.
I love the moment of like killing the dragon, opening up the chest, and like seeing what's inside. It's lame if it's just a bunch of crafting materials. It's cool if it's like, oh, it's a magic sword. That's awesome.
I love in Diablo the different colored things that pop out and the noises that it makes of your loot, right? I love that. I absolutely love that. The happy juices in my brain go off.
On the other hand, when you think about the fantasy of
I think Terra Online had something a little bit like that.
Of these characters, you know, King Arthur had Excalibur, and Aragorn has Anduril. It's not like Aragorn killed an orc and the orc dropped a better sword, so he vendors Anduril and now he has a new sword. You know, that feels weird. So I get the idea, like, no, this is my sword, and I'm just going to focus on making it better and better. I'm not going to throw it aside just because an axe fell out.
Right.
There's different ways to do it. A game like Diablo, Path of Exile, are very based on disposable gear. Like, you're going to go through gear really quickly, and you're constantly going to get gear, but you're never going to get that feeling of like, this is my sword, because, you know, you're going to go through it a lot.
Right. Personally, you don't have a preference. Like, there's obviously pros and cons to both. Yeah.
There's pros and cons to both. I think some games do one style better than others.
From a player's perspective, do you think it's a little bit more off-putting with the whole enhancement route?
If you feel like you literally have to win the lottery to get an item, it's like, oh, there's a 1 in a million chance of this item dropping. That's pretty brutal. On the other hand, winning the lottery is awesome. And if you do get a sword and you're like, only 1 in a million players have this sword, you feel like a badass, even though it was just random, right? It's just luck that you got it. But that's something special. And I think we've almost lost something in games now that players have the expectation of, I'm gonna finish my gear. I'm gonna look at what the best in slot items are. I'm gonna acquire them all, and that's kind of my journey. Because then you never will have that moment of nobody else has this weapon. Like, I'm the only one that has this weapon, and people are gonna see me in town and be like, dude, I can't believe you got that. Because if you want
this is what I've been trying to say like this whole time. Like, games are so different now. Like, because of like the internet and how we all like watch streamers and we watch, you know, what's the best build for this, blah, blah, blah. As soon as I look up a class, and even as I'm leveling, I'm like, what's the best way, what's the best gear to have for this class as I'm leveling, blah, blah, blah. Like everyone's so obsessed with like min-maxing all the time. The one thing I appreciate about a new MMO game is that there will not be any guides and metas at the beginning, and everyone has to figure out. That is such a little like golden time of like when New World first came out. No one knew anything. Like, we were all just like stumbling around. That was so exciting. To
be the case, the like 0.01 chance of something dropping is like way too high.
Like, people like at the beginning, people had no idea what was the most efficient thing to do at the time. Like, farm like mobs, or like just like chop down trees. Like, some people were like grinding trees non-stop for the first 3 days. But like some people were off in the next like towns and stuff. Yeah, that was such a nice time, because no one really knew what the absolute best min-max thing to do was.
It has to be like 0.0000 or thousands of players.
It was fun when you're clueless. Yeah, exactly. Because you're not like, because you're just having fun in the moment, right? And you're not having to do homework to stay on top of like where everyone else is at, you know? And yeah, and I hate feeling like I have to constantly be looking things up to make sure that I am not doing the wrong thing. Although when I'm streaming the games I play, I have you guys in chat to shout at me and tell me that I am not doing something to the best efficiency. Then make a decision, regret it, and learn from it. Well, see, now you're talking like as if it's some kind of grand like life lesson, or like some test that you should be studying for. But that's the problem. Like, some people do just want to play the game casually and not feel like they are studying for a test, and just like live in the moment. Problem is, people will shout at you no matter what you do. Yeah, that's true.
On the first day,
it's one of those things where it's like the harder an item is to get, it is off-putting because people don't get it. But if you are one of the few that get it, that's like that. Like, I mean, everyone wants to show off, right? Show how big their stuff is, right? Like when it comes to an MMO, like, look at me. Like, everyone wants that.
I think it's off-putting because the games give us the expectation that, oh, you are able to get that, like you should get it. I think one of the most brilliant things that the battle royale games do is when you know there's 100 players, you know your chance of being the last player is really rare. Like 99 other players have to screw up for you to be that.
If I upgrade a shit weapon with a finite resource, what have I learned? Yeah, and you've like lost the resource. I don't know. It's like the min-maxing, it comes from people, people want to feel powerful. They want to feel powerful in the game. They want to feel like they are the best. They want to feel like they're good. And a game that relies on you researching and like constantly having to work out whether or not you're spending your resources correctly as well. I don't think that is necessarily something to be celebrated about a video game. The resources in games are mostly never finite. How about I phrase it like this instead, okay? Being punished for using a resource incorrectly, like severely punished, like you need to grind for 3 days to make up for the resource that you spent in a way that you thought at the time made sense, but then you went on Reddit later on that day and someone was like, actually, this is how you should be. If you want to be this and this and this, then you need to do this and this and this. And then you go into a dungeon later and people are like, oh, you don't have the thing that everyone has in this dungeon to make it. Oh, you didn't see that red, like, do you know what I mean? It's, yeah.
Last player. So you go in with the expectation that you probably won't get it. And then when you do get it, and most people get it eventually, like, it feels amazing. And if you tell all your friends, and like chicken dinner, whatever, is great, because you don't expect it. And I wish we could get MMOs back to that point of, I don't expect to get a new item, so when I do, it feels wonderful.
That much better.
Yeah,
much better.
But it's hard. No one wants to go raid, kill a dragon.
So you do like having certain items, like, let's just use that as an example, the Sword of a Thousand Truths.
That would be so amazing, but again, like, we live in this time where, like, everyone, everyone wants to be the best, and we all watch these streamers and stuff to learn more about the games, and and you go on Reddit and you try and find out the best way to do things and the most efficient way to do things and to be the best at the game. And yeah, I don't know, I think it would be nice to like get something when you're not expecting it, but like as soon as one person finds out that you can get this super legendary like loot or whatever from this one place and it's really random, then you'll have like a whole horde of people like sat there farming it for like weeks on end, hoping for this really random drop. And if you don't do that, then you're bad at the game.
Yeah. Like that in a game, like that mysterious weapon or item that it could be in the form of a mount even too. Like you like having.
Invincible in World of Warcraft is like that, super rare, and so people were so excited when they saw it, and they would show it off.
Last thing in regards to progression, I just this will be a quick one, but one of the biggest turnoffs that I've had with BDO, and to this day I don't know why they have it, breaking and downgrading gear, backwards progression. I personally hate it. I really hope that's not in the Riot MMO. Your thoughts on backwards progression?
At Riot, we talk a lot about high highs and low lows, right? And PvP games tend to have high highs and low lows. The low low is like, wow, this sucks. Like I didn't just get beat, I got crushed. I got annihilated. And it feels weird to say that you want that in a game, but it matters, because if you got annihilated, some other player is like,
feeling great.
I feel great. I got a pentakill, whatever. So I think there's some advantage to having low lows, having like durability on gear, having it break, or you have a chance to improve it and actually downgrades. I don't know that that's enough to make the good moments feel good. It just kind of feels crappy. It's like, not worth it.
The last two sections I want to talk to you about is the classes and PvP.
Okay. I mean, they did have a little cut there, but I would like to think that they didn't do the BDO enhancing system. Surely they're smarter than that. Come on.
What are your thoughts on classes in general for MMOs?
It depends a lot on what the design is. Like in World of Warcraft, adding a new class was very expensive for a number of reasons. For one, there were like class-specific armor. So when you add a new class now that every raid tier needs to have like armor for this character. But it wasn't just armor. It was you have to make sure there's room in the raid to like bring this new class, because if you're bringing the
that dog is so fucking cute.
The Death Knight, that may be one less spot for the Paladin or something. So you have to think about stuff like that. You could make a system where adding classes is relatively cheap, but that would have to mean that each class is less distinct, right? Like you probably don't have a whole talent tree or something like that. You probably can't have a lot of unique art, because that, there's just only so many hours a day you can make art. And if you're making lots of different armor for different classes, you're just gonna have fewer classes by definition.
Let's say an MMO is out, right? Like it's up and running. Realistically, when it comes to the budget of it and the time investment of releasing a new class, what would you say is a good pace for a new class release for an MMO that's active and has a pretty good budget?
When we try to think of a way to answer this, I think in general you can add more classes earlier in the life cycle of the game and then slow it down. That's kind of what we've done with League of Legends. Is we used to add new champions pretty quickly, and now it's a few a year. Again, it depends on what you're trying to solve. Are you trying to add novelty to players because they're kind of bored with their class, they want to see something new? Are you trying to monetize because you're selling the classes, and so you need the player base to buy this new class? How much are you going to throw game balance off? Like sometimes players don't want you to screw up the game balance constantly. They're like, hey, the game is in a pretty good state.
Right.
We don't need it to get thrown off.
Your thoughts on locking classes to certain races, factions, and sex?
In general, I feel like players.
So like I think he tweeted about this, saying that he doesn't like this.
Choose what their character looks like because they like the way that character looks.
Yeah.
And once you lock them out of something, it's harder for you just lose that option. Like gnomes in World of Warcraft, they're a little cute race. Some people love gnomes, and if they want to play a gnome, they want to play a gnome. They don't want to feel like they're supposed to play the gnome because, let's say, gnomes are the best rogues in the game because of stat bonuses or because of something like that.
Racials and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, I generally say let players look like whatever they want to look like, and then put all the mechanics on the class. Like if I was making World of Warcraft today, I would probably say any race could be any class, and there's no racial bonuses because it should just be a preference. You like Tauren? Great, play Tauren.
I'm glad you said that because that's one of the biggest turnoffs I had personally had with World of Warcraft. I did play a little bit of Shadowlands and BFA just a little bit. I'm not the most experienced WoW guy, but one of the biggest gripes that I had was, number one, all my friends played Horde, so now I have to choose a race that's on Horde. And then when of those classes, on top of that, I had to choose a class that had the racial passive that I wanted to play for PvP because I was a PvP guy. And I was kind of like, oh my, and everyone's like, oh, if you're Alliance, you gotta go human, or you know what I mean, because of the stun resist or whatever, and I'm just like, oh, it was such a turnoff for me. Yeah.
But I get it. Again, coming from like the Dungeons and Dragons roots, you just expect, oh, I'm an elf, I should be better at some things than a human, and I know that's where it came from. I just think in terms of where we are with video games, like just let people look like whatever they want to look like and don't worry about it.
Yeah,
right. So as far as letting people look like what they want to look like, I will also say, like, I don't like, if I'm going to play a human, I'd rather be able to customize my character to really make it look like how I like it, how I prefer it to look like. And I know there's plenty of people that literally spend hours in the character customization, really customizing the game, even though they're never going to actually see their character's face because of a helmet or a top-down view or whatever that may be, right? What are your thoughts on games and MMOs that do have a deep customization? Is that important to you as a gamer, or do you not really care?
So as a gamer, it's not something I care a ton about. Like I don't spend hours making my character. I understand some players that's really important. And some of the like Eastern MMOs, there's like Moonlight Blade? Like it's crazy the amount of customization you can do. It's like,
what did he say? Moonlight Blade? Can someone find out how I can play that? Is it free? Does it cost anything? Should we play it just for the character customization?
I mean, people have seen, in the West games that offer a lot of customization, but it's nothing like a game like Moonlight Blade, where it's like a human simulator. Like anything you could possibly imagine you can do, and people will like create K-pop stars and stuff because you can get to that level of fidelity.
Right.
Oh,
and that's the player expectation. I think the downside is, do you want to spend 3 hours doing your
mobile game? Oh, let's try it.
Character's eyebrows before you even like jump in the game and decide if you like it or not.
Right. True. To kind of close the subject out, a lot of that does depend on the budget, right? Because I'd imagine a game like Moonlight Blade, those games that offer that feature, that's a big budget. That is not cheap to add into the game, right?
That is big budget. Yeah.
I feel like it did
like a whole team to build that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if it's a mobile game, like you might not be able to even see that level of fidelity. Like, you have like a really cool birthmark next to your eyelash, but no one gets close just to see it.
Exactly. All right, so the last section I want to talk to you about is the PvP section. If I'm going to be...
I mean, I don't know. I don't need like Moonlight Blade or whatever BDO levels of customization. Sometimes that can be overwhelming. But it can be well. It depends on the art style of the MMO, right? The only thing that I really need in character customization, character creation, boob slider, waist slider, thigh slider, good hair, makeup options. I don't necessarily mind like as much, like 10 preset faces, because sometimes the really like extensive character can be overwhelming. I just want to know that what I'm choosing is the best, and it has to be the best, and that's why I take so long in character creation, because I have to try out every single iteration of this color with this hairstyle, or that color with these eyes, or do you know what I mean? Just try and see what looks the best. That's why it takes so long.
Realistic about it is that every MMO, even WoW, where the PvP scene is very, very big, I'd say probably the biggest PvP scene of all MMOs. Even a game like WoW, the population of PvP is somewhere between 1 to 10%, right? Is that a pretty big factor?
10% of your players can still be a lot of players, right? Like
sure,
10%
absolutely.
of your players may play warriors, or even fewer than that. So it's still a lot of people. It just doesn't fit with some games. Some games want to be more story based. They want to be more cooperative. PvP does take a lot of effort to balance.
Sure.
Like
that's
balancing PvP is so easy compared to balancing PvP. The monster doesn't care if it's done for 6 seconds, but 6 seconds is an eternity for a player to be stunned.
Absolutely.
Yeah, PvP is very hard to get right. On World of Warcraft, we made it twice as hard for us because we didn't want to have rules work differently for the most part. We started to get away from that at the end of my tenure, and I'm not even sure what they do today, but I say rules work differently, like, well, this stuns a monster for 6 seconds, but a person for only 1 second, or it does less damage to players, or that kind of thing, so that you give yourself at least some knobs to turn to be able to balance both systems. What really sucks is when PvP players have to just eat something because it was added for PvE, or PvE gets nerfed because of PvP. It's like, oh, I don't PvP at all, I just raid, but now I'm a less effective healer this week because you guys couldn't balance your PvP game. Like, that's the part, as a player and a dev, I really want to avoid.
I'm very much looking forward to the PvP in Riot MMO if it's added to the game. I know there's nothing confirmed about the game, but if it is added, I think I'd be very, very excited to try it out. Now, with that said, though, one of the reasons why PvP isn't as successful in Lost Ark is because of how difficult it is and the experience that you get as a new player. If you're playing against someone that knows what he's doing and you're a little bit less experienced, your experience in PvP is just getting stun locked. locked and just dying. Like whether it's getting one shot or two comboed or three comboed, you're just going to go in there, get staggered or get stunned, and then it's over. And that's just like a bad experience for a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
Generally speaking, like what are your thoughts on like the combat of PvP?
Yeah, I mean, we've learned a lot of this from League of Legends and Valorant is players want to have some agency. It really sucks when you feel like there was nothing I could do. You know, you want to learn from the encounter and think about what would you do differently next time.
Exactly, right? As soon as you die, you sit there and think, oh, okay, I did this wrong. So next time I will try and do that instead. But then like with Lost Ark, when you're against someone who knows what they're doing, you're just stunned until you're dead.
Well, I used my CC immunity too soon, or I should have countered with this earlier. Like then you feel like even though you lost, you kind of know what you're going to do better next time. The reason like the stun lock to one shot feels so bad is you're like, well, what could I have done? There was nothing I could have done. I got jumped, I got stunned, I couldn't get out of it, and then I got killed before I could get out of the stun. Like there's just no reaction there. There's nothing you can do. But yeah, if you got ganked out in the open world and they're much more powerful than you, that's a little different. But if it's supposed to be a fair fight and it just came down to like who got the CC off first, that's not player skill, right? That's not like a back and forth. That's just someone got lucky and that determined the outcome.
Making it even more ping sensitive as well, because ping is also something that we have to deal with in the West as well. Forgot to actually ask this earlier, and I was just reminded by this based off of our PvP talk. Tab targeting versus action combat. This is another very big discussion amongst all MMOs. What do you prefer, and what do you like seeing in MMOs? Are you an action combat guy, or are you a tab target guy? And then you have games like Guild Wars, by the way, that's like a mixture of both. What are your thoughts?
It's like a lot of my answers. There are, like you said, there's strengths and weaknesses to both. I probably played more tab targeting games than action games. Maybe it's just because action games haven't had as much time to mature and they'll get there. But a lot of MMO combat is complicated enough that trying to like stay on the target, thinking that someone was in range when they weren't, like those are pretty frustrating moments, and they feel like you're fighting the game versus fighting the enemy or the other player.
Right. So which game do you feel like you enjoyed the most as far as the combat goes? So like this kind of ties into
I would say that I enjoy tab targeting more. But my hope is that there is room for action combat games. Like I said, I love Dark Souls, I love God of War. Those certainly are tab targeting, and they're very fun visceral combat. And hopefully, action combat and MMOs will get to that point too. But I think it has a long way to go.
Really? Okay, interesting. How much more expensive is it for an action combat game compared to tab targeting? I have no idea, but I would assume that it's more expensive to have an MMO that's designed around action combat compared to tab targeting. I could be completely off on that.
It's a good question. You have to, you need better server ping, you need better server responsiveness and good prediction for what's going to happen, because generally in action games, your positioning, your distance to the target matter a lot. On the other hand, like shooters do pretty well. They have like very, very, important, being able to get a headshot or something like that is down to the microseconds sometimes. So I think it can be done. I think ranged combat is generally easier to design than melee combat. And a lot, Destiny is largely a ranged game, but a lot of the MMOs we're talking about are fantasy, and there's an expectation of I'm going to be up close fighting someone with a sword. And so getting the melee combat to work when you have to be up close, you have to be on top of someone, the swing generally takes longer than just firing another bullet. I think those are all the challenges that action combat is still working on. But, it's pretty good in Lost Ark, feels pretty good in Diablo. So
yeah, it does, but I feel like it does because it's isometric, it's top down. I feel like it's completely different if you're doing it in 3D. It'd
be so frustrating if someone like jumping around behind you, in a real action combat game that was over the shoulder camera, that would just be like, where'd they go? You're constantly. That's the part I dislike the most about PvP and MMOs is the jumping around, the circling. That's not my fantasy of martial arts or sword fighting, of like someone hopping to make them more difficult to hit, right?
Gotcha. Right. Do you like? I don't know if you've watched the competitive BDO arena tournaments, but like if you watch them, it literally looks like one of those Chinese kung fu movies where the characters have like teleporting powers. They're just like going like this, or those Dragon Ball Z, fight scenes where they're just going like this. Really? It's actually kind of insane. Do you prefer something that's a little bit slower?
I've not seen it. So I stopped playing BDO before they added the like equalized PvP option. Am I right? Did they add that? But yeah, no, I stopped playing. When I was playing BDO, PvP was end game. You did it with your guild, and you were trying to get node wars, and literally if you had the best gear, which you could pay for technically, then you would just stomp anyone.
A little bit more boomer friendly, or do you like that off the wall? Like you look at it, you're like, holy shit, like this is crazy, this is insane.
I like it when players can demonstrate skill, and I like that goes for rating too. Is it doesn't have to be one size fits all. Like what makes a fun PvP bout to watch is seeing extreme skill in play. And so I think it's fine if some players can pull off like ridiculous moves that not everyone else can.
Yeah. Okay. So the last thing that I'll ask you, and we could just do this really quick, but it's the lore. And this is I don't know Nekrit. I hope I'm saying his name correctly.
I've heard both Nekrit and Nekrit.
Nekrit. Okay. I apologize if you watch this video, but his videos are fantastic. And I saw you on your Twitter actually link the video, and you're like, I cannot confirm nor deny this, right? And I've been studying a lot of the lore myself, or as much as I can, with this game, because I definitely want to cover it. I want to know everything about it. How important is it for you guys to stay true to that lore for the MMO? Is it going to be a little bit of variation, or are you guys going to be like trying to recreate that story within the MMO?
Yeah, so like, again, without giving any announcements, I can just tell you how we at Riot overall think about it, which is we want players to have that investment. And if you feel like, oh, everything's fluid, everything could change at a moment's notice, it's hard to be invested in the lore because like nothing matters, nothing has stakes, it's just going to constantly change or be retconned. So the way we think about it is there are core truths about the world, about the characters. And if you violate those, that's pretty risky. So Batman is a billionaire who goes out at night, dressed as a bat. If you made a Batman story where he goes around killing people with a sword, people can be like, that doesn't feel like Batman. Like, what do you think here, right? But if you tell a story where you say like, hey, Batman's favorite food is lobster thermidor, and then you break that in another story, players are a lot more willing to forgive. It doesn't have to be like perfect consistency. Now, there are people who want perfect consistency, and they get annoyed when there's anything that's out of sorts. But we think, for the most part, for a lot of players, they just kind of want to feel like that's true to their characters. It's like, oh, Garen would do that. That feels like something Garen would do. Or Kali behaved the way I thought she would based on watching cinematics and KDA and things like that. So that's kind of the level we try to deliver on. And,
Right. When you were watching Necrit's video, were you like, oh my gosh, these guys are good? Or was it like, what was the reaction?
He's been a fan of for a while. So he picks up a lot. There's things he totally gets wrong, and he'd probably be the first to admit it. He's like, oh, look, I'm going to connect the dots. And we're just like, nope, totally wrong. But
oh my God, wait, that's so interesting. There are things he gets wrong. Oh my, I wonder what he was thinking when he watched this.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be like perfect consistency. Now, there are people who want perfect consistency, and they get annoyed when there's anything that's out of sorts. But we think, for the most part, for a lot of players, they just kind of want to feel like that's true to their characters. It's like, oh, Garen would do that. That feels like something Garen would do. Or Kali behaves the way I thought she would based on watching cinematics and KDA and things like that. So that's kind of the level we try to deliver on. And,
Right. When you were watching Necrit's video, were you like, oh my gosh, these guys are good? Or was it like, what was the reaction?
He's been a fan of for a while. So he picks up a lot. There's things he totally gets wrong, and he'd probably be the first to admit it. He's like, oh, look, I'm going to connect the dots. And we're just like, nope, totally wrong. But that's why the speculation's fun. If it was very easy to guess everything, it wouldn't be fun to talk about. So you're like, wait, is that true? Is it, that's the fun part.
Right. It's funny you say that, because one of the things that I'm really curious about when it comes to the races for the Riot MMO, because like one of your races has like 20 races within it, like the hybrid, right? The hybrid race, right? Like
the Messiah, like
yes, yeah.
Animal,
yeah, because then each one of those could be like a race, or if it's just gonna be a few. I don't know. I'm just kind of curious as to how you guys are gonna do it. Is there anything?
Because like we don't have elves and dwarves. We don't have a lot of standard fantasy races. It's honestly a very human-centric IP. Right. A lot of the characters you see depicted are human. Like almost everyone in Arcane was human. That's just the world.
I will ask this question on behalf of the entire MMO community. But the last question I will leave you with is there anything that you can say about the Riot MMO that hasn't been shared already?
What do you mean it's human-centric? I want to play as a Yordle. If I can't play as a Yordle?
Is there anything? The smallest little thing.
Is there anything? I guess I will say players have made a lot of assumptions, and some of them are just flat out wrong, and it's been fun for us to be like, oh yeah, they think they figured this all out, and they've totally got it wrong. So that's been fun for us.
Has there ever been anyone that has said something that would be the equivalent of
Game of Thrones spoiler here?
Gonna be sitting on the Iron Throne at the end, like where you're like, oh my god, this guy, how did he come up with that? He's actually right. Has there been anyone that you've seen?
If you're talking about like the biggest, darkest secrets, crazy story twist, no, I don't think I've seen that yet.
Okay.
But they also, we haven't said much about it all with the story.
Yeah, everything is really mysterious right now.
One of the things Riot has done is gotten players to the point where they trust us to get it right. Like we may not get it right away, and we'll make mistakes, but given enough time and feedback, we'll try to do the right thing.
Okay, so is there? I mean, you obviously can't give us any dates in regards to anything, but would you be able to tell us maybe when you'll be able to say, hey, I think we're going to start releasing some information now? Is that something that like is still years away, even that, or is that something that we can maybe even expect in 2023? If you can't answer that, then obviously that's fine.
The way I'll answer it is we want to be able to communicate when we have real information.
Right, gotcha. Well,
only when we're comfortable with that is when we'll start talking about it more, and
I mean, he did this interview, did he not? Which is more than we've ever had. How far away is this fucking game? Oh, like 10 years.
Again, this is not going to be what we call in the business the grand reveal, where suddenly one day, here's everything.
Here's everything.
It'll be a slow trickle that goes on for a long time.
Well, Mr. Greg, I really appreciate you making the time for doing this interview with me. I wanted to have...
I would love for this game to come out while I'm still a streamer, but I don't even know. At this point, I'm doubtful.
Opportunity to talk to the man that's directing it and get to know you as a person. If there's anything that I've learned from Lost Ark, if the consumers and the players have a lot of respect and love for the director that's running the game, and that really goes a long ways, and I wish nothing but the best for the future of this game. Thank you.
I've missed being able to talk to players about what we're working on, and we can do this again when we actually have something to say and go into more detail. And I know something else I'll say is it's not just going to be me. Like, this team really enjoys interacting and talking to players, so there's going to be a lot of us out there. I'm not just going to be like the only spokesperson for the product.
Any closing comments or statements that you'd like to make before we round this out?
I guess I'd encourage people to keep sharing feedback with the games you like with the with the developers. They're not always going to be able to answer, but they even if it hurts sometimes, generally they do really care about the feedback and they want to know.
Sure.
It's hard when you have like super passionate community and you're a small developer, like some of these developers are, but don't give up. If you're passionate about the game and it's something you love, then don't get discouraged.
Sure. And what would be the best way to like give feedback to the devs right now? Because I don't think there's any official channel set up. I think people just reply to your Twitter comments right now.
Yeah, I meant that in general for any game that you love. For us specifically, there's a lot of ways to communicate, and we generally go where players are. So when discussions are happening on Twitch or in Discord or Reddit or whatever, we know about those and we pay attention. We can't always chime in yet, but we'll get to the point where we're in the conversations as well.
Well, Greg, once again, thank you so much. That's going to do it for this video. I really appreciate you and your time. Once again, big shout out to the Riot team and everyone that was a part of this. Thank you so much. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next video.
Damn. What a good video.